Few people realize that the Korean War, often remembered for its brutal frontline engagements and strategic stalemates, also created profound logistical challenges that rippled through military engineering. One lesser-known reality is that the Allies, particularly during the push into the rugged northern provinces, struggled to construct durable field structures using timber sourced locally. Soldiers and engineers had access to wood that was plentiful, but, prone to twisting, cracking, and warping. The consequences were subtle, but consequential. Poorly framed shelters collapsed under snow loads, bridges developed stress fractures, and supply depots required constant maintenance. Observant military builders quickly realized that understanding wood movement, the way timber expands, contracts, and warps with moisture and time, was not theoretical. It was a matter of survival. This insight was not unique to the battlefield. It reflected centuries of craftsmanship where hand-cut joinery had taught builders more about wood than any textbook could. The lessons learned by carpenters, timber framers, and shipwrights resonate even in military contexts, where knowledge of material behavior can mean the difference between a structure that endures and one that fails. Before the advent of mechanized sawmills, every timber was shaped by hand. Mortises were carved with chisels, tenons trimmed with handsaws, and joints fitted meticulously by eye and touch. Builders quickly discovered that wood does not remain static. A beam cut from a green tree could shrink along its width as it dried, or twist if its grain ran unevenly. The craftsmen who mastered hand-cut joinery developed an intuitive understanding of these movements. They knew that an oak beam with wide growth rings would cup differently than a dense, slow-grown pine. They learned to orient joints so that seasonal expansion and contraction occurred along predictable paths, allowing a structure to breathe without compromising stability. These lessons were not trivial. In military engineering during the Korean War, when bridges or bunkers had to be erected rapidly, even small miscalculations in wood behavior led to structural weaknesses. Engineers who understood the principles of hand-cut joinery could anticipate which timbers would shrink or twist and orient them accordingly. The knowledge allowed temporary structures to last longer, reduced maintenance demands, and prevented minor failures from cascading into logistical crises. A tenon or a mortise is more than just a connection. It is really a response to the material it binds. Experienced builders knew that, cutting across the grain in certain ways would allow the wood to expand without splitting, while other orientations would, guarantee warping. In hand-cut construction, joints were often left slightly loose or slack to absorb the natural movement of timber. The precision was deliberate, too tight, and the wood would split as it dried, too loose, and the structure would wobble. During wartime construction, engineers actually borrowed this principle. They learned to leave small gaps in timber decking on bridges, or to position planks in field huts so that swelling did not compromise the frame. These adjustments were subtle, but honestly critical. Soldiers often reported that structures built by those who understood these methods required less repair and lasted through multiple seasons of freeze-thaw cycles, while others constructed with less care failed quickly. The difference was often imperceptible until the wood moved, and by then, experience had proven who had built correctly. Hand-cut joiners also relied on tactile assessment of moisture. They could feel the difference between a green board freshly sawn from a tree and one that had air-dried for months. Moisture content dictated how wood would shrink or swell. Joints had to accommodate this dynamic behavior. Craftsmen often cut beams so that the outer, denser layers faced tension points, while the softer core absorbed movement. In the Korean War, field engineers applied similar observations. Timber from recently felled local trees was, prone to twisting. Understanding that a particular orientation of the growth rings could reduce warping, they rotated planks and beams strategically. In supply depots, beams with flat sawn grain were placed where shrinkage would not compromise door frames or roof joints. Soldiers quickly recognized that timber that had been cut and oriented correctly endured heavy snow, wind, and foot traffic far better than timber installed haphazardly. Traditional builders did more than react to wood's immediate condition. They factored in seasonal movement. Timber expands in high humidity and contracts in dry winter air. Hand-cut joinery was often designed to anticipate these cycles. Mortises were cut slightly wider, tenons tapered, and pegs left flexible. Builders knew that a structure would settle over time, but could survive decades if joints were arranged with movement in mind. This awareness influenced wartime carpentry. Engineers constructing field barracks or ammunition storage considered prevailing weather. Beams were positioned so that contraction during cold months did not cause roofs to sag, and expansion during the wet season did not split floorboards. These small adjustments required knowledge that came directly from centuries of hand-cut joinery practices, illustrating that traditional craftsmanship had practical survival applications even in the most modern of conflicts. Perhaps, the most important lesson from hand-cut joinery was the importance of grain direction. Craftsmen learned to read the wood, placing wider faces in compression or tension based on expected movement. They avoided placing knots at stress points and oriented boards so that the natural cup or bow of the timber complemented structural load paths. During the Korean War, engineers who could assess grain direction reduced failures dramatically. Soldiers noticed that planks installed with the wrong grain orientation twisted, leaving gaps in flooring or misaligned beams. Those with knowledge of traditional methods consistently produced structures that remained square even under repeated freeze-thaw cycles or in areas of high humidity. The lesson is simple, but honestly often overlooked. Wood is alive, even when cut, and its movement must be anticipated, not suppressed. Finally, the practice of hand-cut joinery instilled a mindset that translated directly to survival and resilience. Builders had to observe, measure, and fit pieces carefully. Mistakes could not be easily corrected once a joint was cut. This required a detailed understanding of material properties, patience in execution, and attention to subtle variations between individual timbers. Field engineers in Korea, they were often under immense pressure to work quickly, but they still found real benefits in this approach. Teams who took the time to pause and assess how the wood behaved before assembly managed to create structures that lasted, while those who rushed ended up facing repeated repairs. The broader lesson here, really, is that in any situation where human endurance meets natural materials, careful observation, attention to detail, and a genuine respect for how materials behave can reduce failure rates, improve efficiency, and, quite honestly, save lives. So, studying hand-cut joinery, it teaches us that understanding natural materials is absolutely essential, both in historical settings and in the modern world. Builders, over time, learned through experience how timber moved, how to accommodate it, and how to use its properties to their advantage. Military engineers applied these very same lessons in wartime construction, and, even survivalists today can benefit from these principles when working with wood for shelters, tools, or bridges. These lessons really highlight the importance of patience, observation, and respect for natural materials, qualities that honestly remain valuable in any era. Understanding these practices also, reshapes how we look at historical structures. Timber-framed barns, ships, and bridges that have survived for centuries did so not because of modern adhesives or fasteners, but because their builders understood the material at a fundamental level. They knew how to let the wood move while maintaining structural integrity. This insight has direct relevance for anyone attempting durable construction with minimal resources, whether in historical reconstruction or, well, practical survival scenarios. What hand-cut joinery teaches us is more than just a technical lesson, it's a mindset. Observing, interpreting, and respecting the behavior of materials is as relevant on a battlefield as it is in a civilian workshop. During the Korean War, engineers who applied these lessons avoided structural failures, maintained operational readiness, and reduced logistical strain. Today, those lessons can guide anyone working with wood, from historical carpenters to modern survivalists. Preserving and understanding these traditional methods ensures that we do not lose knowledge that can save time, resources, and, honestly, even lives. Studying hand-cut joinery is not nostalgia. It is a practical archive of human ingenuity and adaptation. If you value this depth of historical insight, subscribe to History Vault. Share this video with others who appreciate the overlooked lessons of past craftsmanship and explore how understanding materials and human experience together can illuminate both history and practical survival skills.